All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome back to History for Friday. We're going to be getting more into some more conflicts. You know, we talked about those 4 wars before. Here we go with some more conflicts. Number 1 is the cause and effects of the Korean War. The Korean War actually was an action by the United Nations because the North Koreans went over the 39th parallel into South Korea and attacked them, trying to make South Korea communist. And because of that, the United States became involved. Really, the entire United Nations. You would not believe the number of countries that actually sent troops to fight in that war, unfortunately most of which were from the United States. But the effects of the Korean War were that at the end they talked about, it really, and this is what was interesting about the Korean War. The Korean War is still going. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. But the Korean War only has a ceasefire agreement in place. And a lot of people don't understand that, don't know that. But that's what they have in place, is a ceasefire. And people still talk about that. Of course, the greatest generation, the ones that fought in World War II, have mostly passed away. Now the real old people that we have, the veterans anyway, are from the Korean War. Those are the people that fought in the Korean War. But the Korean War, of course, was about from 1950 to about 1953, right in that time period. And of course, it was just a really, again, it was not, a war was not declared. It was more of a police action. In fact, they still refer to it as the Korean War. Just like Vietnam, no war was declared in Vietnam, yet they call it the Vietnam War, even though it was a conflict. It really wasn't a war. Well, they had half a million troops there in Vietnam. I would say it's pretty much a war. But anyway, the Berlin airlift is something that happened. What the Soviet communists did, the Soviet Union, at the end of World War II, and as they started controlling the eastern part of Germany and broke Germany essentially into 2, where you had East Germany and West Germany, and you had that in place until about 1992. What they did, they ended up blockading the country, and they blockaded Berlin. Berlin was actually in East Germany, yet you had free zones in Berlin. You had a U.S. zone, you had a French zone, you had a Great Britain zone or British zone that were free zones. And the Soviet zone, of course, was not a free zone, and it was essentially part of East Germany. Well, it got to the point where they were stopping traffic. Trucks could not bring stuff in, material such as food, medicine, that sort of thing. And they blocked the rail lines as well. And so nothing could be shipped in. And so they allowed the Allies to fly in. They gave them 3 corridors that they could fly in from. And that was referred to as the Berlin airlift in 1948. And that was a major undertaking. And I mean, planes would land, and they would have all of their stuff unloaded probably within like like 5 minutes, and then they would get refueled and they'd take off again. And it would just be constant planes landing in Berlin. And it was because of that that the people of Berlin did not go hungry. Their medical care was able to be taken care of, and it was a pretty neat thing. The cause and effects of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The United States, in fact, they still have them. I think they still fly them too. I don't know why. But they fly these planes called U-2 planes, and they're very high altitude. Evidently, they go very, very fast, but not fast enough for an anti-aircraft missile. One got hit as it was flying over the Soviet Union, and the pilot bailed out, and they refer to that as the Gary Powers incident. That's a long story. I won't bore you with it, but anyway, one of these U-2 planes went over Cuba, and notice that this was after the Cuban Revolution, where Fidel Castro took power in 1959. In the early 60s, they became friendly with the Soviet Union, and they brought in not only a lot of Soviet materiel, but they started bringing in and actually putting together missile sites on Cuba, 90 miles from the United States. Okay? If that isn't scary, that scares you to death, right? Long story short, John F. Kennedy caused there to be not an embargo, but an embargo, as well as a naval blockade of Cuba. And they intercepted several Soviet ships, turned them around, and finally it got to the point where essentially Khrushchev, who was the leader of the Soviet Union, and John F. Kennedy had a staring contest, and Khrushchev blinked. Okay? And Khrushchev didn't stay in power very much longer after that. And so they took down their missiles. We capitulated. We said, hey, we'll get our missiles out of Turkey. You guys get your missiles out of Cuba. And so we had some Minuteman, I believe it was Minuteman missiles in Turkey. We pulled those out, and Soviet Union did the same. They took theirs out. And so, but that didn't sit well with the Politburo in Moscow. Khrushchev essentially got the hook, and Leonid Brezhnev took over, and he was in power until he died. Okay? Long time. Until the guy died, he was in power. Cause and effects of the Chinese Civil War. You had Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek leading the charge for the communists. You had, I said Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek was actually the nationalists. It was Chow En-lai that was with Mao Zedong. Excuse me, slip of the tongue there. They fought against each other, and the communists actually pushed, for lack of a better word, they pushed them into the ocean. And now the nationalists are, of course, in Taiwan, what is called Taiwan. We are very friendly with Taiwan, and China doesn't like that, and they keep posturing themselves in the China Sea, South China Sea, by Taiwan, and I don't know what's going to happen with that, but anyway, it was the nationalists against the communists, and the communists won out. That's essentially what happened. And it's funny too, because the communists ended up being our allies in World War II. We helped them against the Japanese. And they hated the Japanese. They hated them with a passion. And we helped them out with that. Containment was a way of thought regarding communism And what the powers that be in Washington wanted to contain communism. They wanted to contain communism in Eastern Europe. They wanted to contain communism in Korea. And that also came to a point in Vietnam with this containment. And that's why we became involved in Vietnam. Even after the French had had their rear ends handed to them by the Vietnamese, Ho Chi Minh was ruthless. He was the leader. He essentially was their leader from the 1920s, and wanted them to be their own country. He never got to see it come to fruition. He actually died before the communists overtook South Vietnam, and excuse me. But that's essentially what happened. The Truman Doctrine was pretty much right along the lines of hold on a second. It was sort of along the lines of the Monroe Doctrine, except it was pointed toward the Soviet Union. And that's what was kind of crazy, is that if anyone was ever threatened by the Soviet Union, we would come to that country's aid, essentially is what they were saying. Now, did that ever happen? In a roundabout way, it may have happened. The Marshall Plan was a plan put together by George C. Marshall. He had been general of the Army during World War II. And he was President Truman's Secretary of State. And he put together a plan where countries, of course, led by the United States, would funnel literally billions of dollars to rebuild war-torn Europe. That's pretty much what you would figure would happen, because who was the country that blasted Europe? Hello, raise your hand. Yeah, it was the United States. Our bombs pretty much decimated Europe, and so it figures that we would have to pay, I guess, sort of damages. Not that it was in a court of law, but this Marshall Plan was to help Europe rebuild, and really it did. I mean, you look at the economy now of Germany, tremendous economy, one of the world's finest, and it's mainly because we helped them rebuild. France as well. France is one of the world's great economies. Belgium, the Netherlands, we helped them rebuild too. Some of their major cities were devastated in the war. Norway, we helped them as well. The Eisenhower Doctrine was a little bit different than that. The Eisenhower Doctrine actually, the Eisenhower Doctrine really has to do more with the Middle East. At this time, Israel was a brand new country. When Eisenhower took office, they had been a country for 5 years. But during his presidency, during Eisenhower's presidency, they were in how many wars against their Arab neighbors? And so essentially, Eisenhower said, "Hey guys, enough's enough. You mess with Israel, you're going to mess with us." Never happened, but we've given so much aid to Israel continually. We continue to give aid to them, not only training but equipment, that sort of thing. Now, the cause and effects of the Vietnam War, of course, we went in on the side of a very corrupt regime in South Vietnam. They had a dictator and his brother who were in charge. That dictator and his brother ended up being assassinated, and we still were behind the people that took charge after that. Go figure. Thank you, Lyndon Johnson. And we eventually, instead of trying to win the war, we just tried to essentially keep things from happening. And the Tet Offensive in 1968, man, that kicked not only South Vietnam's rear end, but the U.S.'s rear end. The North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong showed that they could attack anywhere at any time. And that is essentially caused a downward course for the war. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I believe 9.3 will talk about that. The Gulf of Tonkin resolution was did it happen or did it not? It was possible that a torpedo was fired. It was a real joke that they made a mountain out of a molehill about something that possibly happened. It may just have happened, and that's what happened with this Gulf of Tonkin resolution. The Pentagon went to great lengths to show where these things possibly happened, to get congressional approval. And this resolution essentially gave President Johnson carte blanche to increase troop levels and that sort of thing. Sent my dad to Vietnam with the 25th Infantry Division at the beginning of 1966. The domino theory it goes right along with containment. The theory was that if one country fell to communism, it would be just like dominoes falling, okay, that another country. The United States was afraid that if Vietnam fell, Laos would fall, Cambodia would fall, Thailand would fall, and it goes on and on. Excuse me. And Congress finally put the kibosh on things. They finally said, hey, we don't like, the president doing, just unilaterally doing things. The president has to tell the leaders of Congress within 48 hours when he's putting boots on the ground. Not so much as having advice and consent, like he would have to have approval of the Senate for nominees and that sort of thing. But the leaders in Congress would be able to voice either their approval or their disapproval of what's happening. There's been updates on that over the years on the War Powers Act, but still, for the most part, the president has to tell Congress what's happening. Okay, now that's the end of the vocabulary, but let's look at what we're doing here. And the one thing that you're going to be given, either that or you can just do it online, is this Cold War poster. And this really brings to fruition this what happened in 1948. Okay, we're talking the Berlin airlift. And that's what this is. This was saying, hey, milk is a new weapon of democracy, okay? So you're going to be able to look at this poster, and you're going to, you can either do it online or you can get the handout for the See, Think, Wonder. And what it is it gives you the opportunity to tell you what you see. And obviously in looking at that poster, you're going to see a lot of stuff. And what you're thinking about that. What does it make you think? And then I wonder, what what does this poster make you wonder about? Okay? And then, when we're done with that, there's some readings on the Korean War and on the Cold War for you to do, just some short readings. And I want you to use those sentence starters that are there on the assignment. And this will be in your journals, but you need to go through and you need to look at each of these things and answer these questions. Use those sentence starters and complete them. You know, what do they mean? The events of the early Cold War were all what? Okay? These things will tell you. The events of the early Cold War did or did not uphold America's values because, okay? You'll be able to make the decision on that. All right? Well, guys, been about 21 minutes, which is pretty good. And you guys take care, do your stuff, do all your work, and we will see you guys on Monday. You guys take care. Bye-bye for now.